Yo, boys, welcome back to Star Spangled Gamblers. Kind of a big time of heavy seas in the political prediction industry. As promised, we're very excited to have with us here John Phillips, who you probably know the name, and if you don't, you should. He's the founder and CEO of PredictIt, the largest political prediction market in the United States, so de facto kind of the industry leader. John has a lot of successes that have predated PredictIt. You can Google him or you can listen to his last podcast that he joined us for if you want to learn more about it. But really, let's get to the point here. John, you're on Star Spangled Gamblers today to talk about a major challenge that you and sort of by proxy, the entire political gambling industry is facing. So I'm going to summarize real quickly. This is kind of your show to be the star of, though, so the sooner I can get you talking, the better. Last week, the federal government announced, I'm going to sort of butcher this, John, so you can correct me as we get on. But as I understand it, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, which is the bureaucracy that regulates PredictIt and other futures market, basically, for lack of a better term, said, like, wind down your operation by February 2023. Of course, at Star Spangled Gamblers and among our listeners, we don't want that to happen. There's a really strong community of political predictors that have grown up alongside PredictIt. In fact, we put up one tweet when this came out, like literally just one tweet, didn't put any like advertising money behind it. 186,000 people read it this weekend. I think I saw like several thousand people went to sign a petition to go to the CFTC and offer comments. So that's sort of a testament of how strong the community that exists in the political prediction world is. So that's all preamble, but obviously very serious challenges that the industry is facing. And my hope, John, I know that there's things you can say and there's things you can't say, and we respect that. My hope is that in the course of this interview, we can sort of address some of the big questions traders have, which are, one, like, why did the CFTC reverse course and take such a punitive tone with PredictIt and political gamblers writ large? How secure are people's funds with PredictIt? Are you guys planning to fight the CFTC or modify your business operations in some way that us dummies don't really understand? And if we can also address, to some extent, if the soap opera aspect of this, which is, was there like a hit job that was ordered on you guys from someone else in the industry? All that and more. So, John, welcome to the show. How are you doing today? Should I ask you that?
How do I look? I mean, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Your face really sells it. I'm very calm about the state of the industry, just seeing your sort of optimism in your khaki suit.
Well, I mean, look, we've been through rough seas before. This PredictIt was initiated in 2014 when the Commodities Futures Trading Commission issued what's called a no action letter, as you guys know. But some of your listeners may not. So a no action letter was issued to Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, and Victoria is it's one of the top universities in the world, and they pioneered prior to the issuance of the no action letter to Victoria. The university had pioneered their own prediction market called iPredict. Not too many people know about that, but iPredict was was really a forerunner of PredictIt, and they ran that for about 7 years, and it was quite successful. In fact, so successful that it became a bit of a burden for the university to operate it. And so, as they were looking for a way to wind it down, we coincidentally were in contact with them because we were looking for a way to supplement or improve upon public opinion polling.
Yes.
Which was widely used and still is, as everybody knows, but had some pretty notable flaws and shortcomings because of the way polling works. It was dated from the minute you did it. It had limited forecasting ability unless you were right on top of the event. So a year out, it doesn't really mean much as to who's in the polls or not in terms of who's going to be the eventual nominee or the election winner. It's expensive, polling is, and it's also as I say, it's dated in the sense that once you do the poll, the information gets
it's backward looking. It looks backwards. It doesn't look forward.
And also, you're asking people when you do a poll. I mean, we make use of market research, and I can talk a little bit about a really interesting some market research that we've done at PredictIt in terms of what our traders want and what they're interested in, and et cetera. But we were looking for some way to supplement polling principally for political campaign purposes. We're we're a nonpartisan supplier of technology to campaigns and advocacy groups. Anybody who wants to influence a decision at the polling place, we're one of a number of suppliers that provide that gear so you can get up and running. So long story short, there had been a prediction market. There were prediction markets prior to that, as you guys know. There was InTrade. There was Iowa Electronic Markets, which actually might be useful for this conversation because IEM, Iowa Electronic Markets, was the first to get a no action letter for a prediction market. This is more than 30 years ago. So prediction markets have been around for a while. PredictIt was conceived in that way. Victoria received the no action letter. And from that point forward, it was quite popular.
So, I mean, at a certain point, the question is what changed? Because you guys have operated under Republican and Democratic administrations. Like, I know that nothing's ever really settled in politics, but it felt like a pretty secure footing. I mean, what happened with like the new sheriff in town? Or, I mean, is there an inciting event to this story?
Well, I'm limited in what I can say, but there's been communication with the regulators throughout the entire process. The no action letter was issued, and all the parties involved have tried to adhere to the spirit and the text of the no action letter. So I can't characterize all the communications, but I can tell you there's been a lot of communication with respect to scope and the like, and we think this is something that's going to be. We hope this is something that's going to be resolved. The market, according to the notice, and the notice speaks for itself, but the market's up until February 15th, and what happens after that is subject to decisions. And we'll have to see. I don't have an answer. I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
I can't predict. But maybe you guys can. But this is really something that will have to get worked out.
So it sounds like you're not just popping champagne and remembering the good times. Like you're still in, for lack of a better term, like fight it mode. Well, negotiate it mode.
Yeah, I mean it's going to have to be worked out. Right? Because you got a whole bunch of markets for 2024, and the outcome of those markets is undecided. The commission, provided the decision by DMO provided a 6-month period of time for the 2022 markets to resolve, and that's sufficient time for those markets to resolve. But the question is really the bigger question, right, is what's the future of prediction markets?
Right.
It is less about PredictIt. And it's more about where is this going to go? Our markets on political events and election events, which are two different things, right?
Right.
Our markets around events. Let's expand it to that. Are they going to just go away? No. People are going to. Events like Brexit, or like a presidential election, or the appointment of a cabinet member with a particular point of view. These affect people every day, and they affect the markets. And so event contract markets are going to expand, I think. They're here to stay. It's unnatural and to say, well, on everything, you can do it on pork bellies, but you can't do it on a presidential election. It doesn't make sense. So, and I think there's a broad recognition of that, and there's movement in how these markets are going to be regulated. So that hasn't been decided yet, but there's a framework that's been set up, and I think people are going to be forecasting these events for a long time to come.
So it sounds to me that probably the number one question we get from our users, like everyone's more interested in themselves than they are in the world. So everyone wants to hear and know that PredictIt or a version of your project will continue on. But I think what they most immediately want to know is like, will PredictIt close early? Will predict, like, how will they settle out these contracts that, you don't pay until 2024 or something like that? And like, if you go on Twitter, that's what they're trading theories about how all this is going to go down. But from what you've said, it sounds like there may be a couple innings left to play in the game before that decision's made.
Yeah, I can't comment on what's going to happen for 2020, after February 15th, because I don't know.
Yeah.
And anybody tells you that they know, probably don't know. I can tell you that all those contracts that settle before that date will resolve as they normally would.
Yeah.
So if you've got anything on the 2022, those markets, they're all in scope. They're all operating as they should and would, and those will continue. But I don't have an answer for you, and I don't think anybody does in terms of what's going to happen after February.
Got it. Pratik, do you want to jump in here, or should I just keep yapping?
Well, look, I'll ask you a very elementary question for the record. I mean, are you prepared to say that PredictIt today is in full compliance with the terms of the CFTC's no action letter and other policies?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Okay. And then is your goal here to basically secure a no action letter, or are you looking at other means of staying in compliance with regulators?
So at present, unless there's a no action letter in place, as there is for Iowa and for Iowa electronic markets run by the University of Iowa and for PredictIt with Victoria University, you can't trade. You can't run a market on election outcomes. That's not permitted. So you need a no action letter in order to do that. And so there's no direct route to being able to open a market at present, on election outcomes absent a no action letter. Now, maybe that's not how it should be. I don't think that's how it should be, and I think that block is going to change. I think it's going to go away. When it's going to go away, is it by the end of the year? Is it before 2024? I don't know. But at present, you're not allowed to run a market on an election outcome, as I said. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't run a political outcome market, because what's an election outcome and what's a political market are two different things. You can say an election market is a subset of political markets, but political markets can have things to do with elections and things that are remotely connected to, not even connected to elections, but political outcomes. Will there be a summit, for instance, that sort of thing?
Right.
You can put into either category. Point being, there is a route to being able to put up political outcome markets, however, if you set aside the election markets, and how you want to define what an election or a political market is, which is a big part of what this is. And that route involves registering as a designated contract market, getting approved by the CFTC, and then operating in compliance with those filings. And we have filed to become what's called a regulated exchange. And you can see that at the CFTC's website. And I can't comment. It's one of the things I'm not allowed, I can't comment on because it's just, we don't comment on that. But that is underway. And there is a precedent for DCM to be licensed by the CFTC. So there will be incremental progress irrespective of what happens with PredictIt towards being able to trade event contracts and what the scope and definition of a political event contract versus a non-political event contract, that has to be determined. And that's, in many cases, that's part of what this dance is about. Is this political? Is it really election? Is it blocked, therefore, from being put up? Those determinations have to be made, and that's where that's where people should make their voice heard.
So is this like a situation where you guys are building like a bigger mansion on top of a taller hill, and like when you went to the town like mayor or sheriff to get the EPA permits to build the water pipes and stuff, they said, actually, wait, we're looking at your old house now and it's like out of compliance. Like here's your ticket or something, or I mean,
I don't want to. That's very clever, but I'm not going to respond to that. This is we're crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It's not a direct route sometimes when you're trying to do something innovative, new, and different.
People don't like that,
and there's sometimes good reasons, right? There are good reasons why you want these markets regulated. We want these markets regulated. We're self-regulated in some ways, even though we operate in a no action letter, right? But we think these markets should be regulated. We filed a petition with the CFTC 2.5 years ago. It's a weighty document. It was drafted by those very familiar with event contract markets. Because frankly, to the credit, the CFTC has been looking at this for more than a decade. Because we're not the first people to come along and say, hey, events in the real world, political events affect markets, and therefore you should allow investors to hedge risk associated with this, something Pratik and others are familiar with. So I wouldn't embrace your analogy, but and frankly, I think there are almost too many moving parts to put your finger on one specific thing that has occurred. And I all I can say is my gut is it's going to get worked out. Because it's got to get worked out.
Yeah.
Because nobody really wants all this stuff to rush offshore, where you're going to have Russian oligarchs and a bunch of other people sort of in there. Because think about it, in large part because of what this community, our community, I'll call it, of forecasters has done is validate the merits of prediction markets, not just as a way to make some money, but also as a forecasting tool. How great is it that we've come upon a way to part the curtains just a little bit and look into the future, which is what forecasting is. It's not 20/20 vision. It's not right 100% of the time. But the fact of the matter is that's a very powerful tool. Why would you not want to allow this to progress and evolve? And it's going to be there anyway. It's just a question of whether people are going to be protected, investors are going to be protected, and whether this is going to happen in an orderly fashion or if it'll be disorderly and chaotic and combative.
I feel like this is usually where, Pratik, am I allowed to steal your thunder, or are you going to say your thing about like Congress versus regulators versus is there a constituency for this on the Hill? At some point, like the law is the law, and different companies can come in and hire former high-ranking members of the CFTC to help them out. But like, what is there not some piece of the puzzle, which is there needs to be like a National Association for Information Markets or something that has 15 members of Congress who pen letters to the CFTC or sponsor bills and stuff that kind of like seek to create a more permanent home for political prediction? Because it just seems unsustainable to like just watching the soap opera of how the companies in the United States have tried to piece this industry together. It seems like it's just very difficult to do that without having, a change in law and like a strong constituency, both on the Hill and in the administration, and frankly, like an organized community around it. It's just like, it's too much to me for one person or one entity like PredictIt to just sort of figure this out, as they go. Or I guess that's also my way of saying, is there a constituency that we don't know about that that has the back of political predictors, some congressman or senator or like whatever it might be? That feels like you're pleading the fifth, John.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, you're asking Pratik. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So I got to process that through. I didn't realize that, because I'd listened to the podcast from last week, and I know some of these issues were brought up. So give me your question.
I mean, so I guess the point of my question is, it seems like to make political prediction a secure industry in the United States, the question is more than just like, do you have the right lawyers that the CFTC will listen to? Which seems to be, frankly, what people in this industry strategy has been, is like, have a good legal team, have a good product, like make sure the CFTC doesn't get mad at you. But like, where, to me, it's, and to Pratik, I think would agree, like the obvious question is, where's like the change in law? Where's the change of policy? Like, what is going on, Capitol Hill that can make this a more sustainable industry than just, are we in the good graces of the CFTC or not right now?
So I think there's interest on the Hill. And the Hill, reacts to different stimuli, but I think there's interest. I know there's interest on the Hill, and there have been lots and lots of discussions with the various interested parties. There've been letters. It's been all kinds of activity.
Oh, good. People that will miss that, but I feel like a letter is a very good lobbying tool when you get members on the right committees to send a nasty gram to the administration to say, don't touch this thing we care about.
Well, it's what I would characterize it differently. Actually, I think there's a recognition that this is a change. This is an important area, and there can either be a regulatory. It can either be regulated or unregulated or somewhere in between, self-regulated. Right. And ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Right. Well, that's how I treat my problems. I ignore them.
Yeah. Well. Don't we all? So, yeah. But this is one that has been bubbling up for a while, and I think it's inaccurate to think people don't care about this. I think people do, and I think thoughtful people on Capitol Hill and elsewhere understand that there needs to be, there need to be some decisions made, and I think those decisions are going to get made in a rational way. However, I think to your earlier point, having a taxpayer express a point of view to a government official and a voter express a point of view to a government official is actually quite effective. Yeah. And especially, and I will say only if it's thoughtful and respectful and to the point.
Yeah.
And I think
so. Don't call them like beta cucks.
Our community here is really good at that because they've been using PredictIt. They've been thinking about these things, and so I think. If you go to the SSG website, there's a link there where you can compose your thoughts and send them to to the commissioners. That's being updated with some email addresses on the Hill of the important and relevant committees, members on the important relevant committees. Those are getting read. Yeah, they are getting read. They're registering, and again, it's got to be these are intelligent, thoughtful people, and they will take into consideration what voters and taxpayers have to say about how they want this to go down. So I would say thank you for putting the link up. You can also go to savepredictit.org, and you can we try to make it as easy as possible to register your opinions, and that is going to matter a lot. Probably as much as anything to do with lobbyists and other things that are going on. It's very, very important.
Yeah, getting 1,000 comments for rulemaking is pretty significant. I mean, usually a rulemaking is like a couple dozen.
Yeah. Especially one as somewhat esoteric as this, but frankly, the issues are pretty clear.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Congress intervening and passing or upgrading or updating laws would be the gold standard here ultimately. But do you think that in the interim, there's some kind of a remedy either from someone higher up in the executive branch, or do you think there is a judicial remedy here? And I suspect that you can't or don't want to answer, but hypothetically, could one sue the CFTC if appeals don't go the way you want?
So I can't comment on that. Sorry.
How about generally speaking, not in the context of PredictIt?
I don't know the answer to that, is what I should say. So go ahead.
Okay. So generally speaking here for the industry, not in the context of PredictIt, does someone senior in the executive branch have the ability to essentially direct or guide the CFTC in a different direction, do you think, or is it really incumbent on Congress or the judiciary to figure this out?
I think the commissioners are, look, there are a number of different levers, and it's not just the Congress, but the Congress is obviously very important when it comes to a federal agency such as this. It is that the executive branch has obvious input, and then there's a question of what is legal. I can tell you this: we're not going to do anything that is not legal. We're a compliance company at heart, and I know. This is part of why we're here, is because there has been an allowance for these prediction markets, and it's been successful. It's been successful. It's grown in many ways. We're here because it's been so successful. If nobody really cared and nobody was paying attention, who cares?
Yeah, there are no haters for losers.
What's that?
Like losers don't have haters. You got to be good to have haters.
That's right. The worst thing is nobody cares, right? Nobody's paying attention. And the fact of the matter is, people care a lot about this. They're passionate about it. And this is how communities sort of come together and get legislation passed and get, actions taken by their executive branch. And people care a lot. So there's a path.
Do you feel like the CFTC big timed you by penning a staff opinion and not a commission opinion? Like, is that an important legal distinction between the two? Because I noticed that it was very clearly written as a staff opinion.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay.
Can I ask you there? And I'm asking actually out of just sincere curiosity.
We literally don't know what we're talking about.
Well, you know a lot about what you're talking about. I just can't answer a lot of what you're asking. I don't know the answers to some of these questions. Yeah. So.
No, but actually, I'm genuinely curious. One thing I've wondered about this process is, obviously, if you're playing this game, one way to do it is to play an inside game, hire the right lobbyists, and keep things confidential. But why is it that from the standpoint of PredictIt, which from what I gather has always played by the rules and has tried to be transparent and so forth, why is it that it's so difficult to sort of talk about or provide insights into what's going on? Is it a strategy at PredictIt that causes you to be cautious, or is it in fact, is there something actually binding or in the nature of your agreement that prevents sort of more disclosure or transparency into what the process is and what the state is of play generally?
That's a great question, and I think part of the answer is it's somewhat opaque. The process itself.
It's what? Sorry, you clipped out.
It's somewhat opaque.
Okay, yeah.
There's a whole category. There's a lot that I don't know, generally speaking, and then when it comes to what the process is, I don't know, and I've tried to make it clear today that right. So my general feeling on this is, having been at the table for lots of discussions regarding the direction and the future over many years, right? It's for 7.5 years. That my experience is that this is going to get worked out somehow. It's that there is a broader regulatory path that has some of the details of which, such as trading in election contract markets, whether it's going to be permitted in the future, which it's not now. absent a no action letter. Those things are going to have to get worked out. How that's going to get worked out, I don't know.
So I want to ask you sort of two more things before we let you get back to your life. The first one is we have to address, well, I'm going to ask you this. Let me say there are a lot of traders out there who are throwing shade on one of your competitors, Kalshi, for hiring a bunch of former CFTC commissioners and staffers and, accusing them of basically just buying the entire agency to do their bidding. I understand that you're probably not going to answer any questions about that. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay. Well, can I ask you about? Can I tell you about some of my favorite movies, and can you tell me if you like them or not? So okay. So let me tell you. Do you remember that movie, My Cousin Vinny?
Yes.
Okay, I love this movie. So it's for those of you who haven't seen it since the early '90s when it came out. It's basically about some blue-collar Italian guys from Brooklyn who get framed for murder in Alabama. And because they're poor and they're not well connected with government officials, they get put in jail and they're almost sentenced to life in prison. And really the only reason that any of this ever happened again is just because they aren't as rich as the rich guys in this town in Alabama, and they don't have connections with the government, so they get put in jail. Do you like that movie?
It was a long time ago, so I like your description of the movie, but go ahead.
Okay, another one of my favorite movies is a movie called Election, starring Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. Did you see that one? It was, it was a great movie, right?
Yeah.
So that movie,
I don't know. It was good. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
So in that movie, Matthew Broderick plays a high school teacher, and his most precocious student, Reese Witherspoon, is a very entrepreneurial person. She starts up a campaign. She's a startup campaign. She starts up a campaign to be class president, and Matthew Broderick is in charge of regulating her campaign. But the big plot twist is Matthew Broderick, the regulator, starts to sleep with the person he's regulating, who's Reese Witherspoon, the startup person. So the regulator is sleeping with the startup. And because the regulator is sleeping with the startup, it becomes really perverse, and the integrity of the entire election is just shot. So do you like that movie?
Yeah, what I remember of it, I do. You know what? That's a great segue into a question, but you can't take my answers to mean anything. First of all, I'm not even going to go there. You guys, I'm so glad I came on. I don't think I was able to back down any of these questions, but more power to you. I love you guys.
Well, let me ask a related but serious note there. And again, generally speaking, not in the context of PredictIt.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead.
Look, I think
you're through the worst of it, John.
Yeah.
Oh, I am. Okay, good. I'm trying to say as little as possible that complicates things further. So go ahead.
No, look, I mean, one of the things that I think this entire episode has made clear, regardless of how it shakes out, is that people now know who CFTC commissioners are. I mean, these people are no longer anonymous, and it's clear that they have a lot of power and authority, probably, frankly, more than they themselves would like to have. I mean, what do you think would be a good process going forward for selecting CFTC members, and how can our community over the long term shape that process? Is it, are these people, I assume, are subject to Senate confirmation? They're appointed. So what have you gleaned in the course of your work at PredictIt about how these people are selected, what the right background is, and how the public at large can influence who these people are and hopefully steer them in a direction that's favorable to political prediction markets?
Well, that is a great question, and there I can frame it even, I think, more tightly if you allow me. Yeah, there's 6 months. 6 months between now and February 15th, midnight, February 15th, and the process. This process is pretty straightforward. The CFTC needs to make some additional decisions, determinations on the general direction, regulatory direction for event contract markets, which they're making, and they're gonna have to make. And they'll, the reason they have email addresses on the website, et cetera, is because they invite comment, and so the comment is very, very important. But there's 6 months to go, And that's enough time, in my opinion, more than enough time for people who really care about this to register their sentiment in terms of what they think should happen. And that then you extend that to the Hill and to the administration. And it's, this will determine the direction for prediction markets for the foreseeable future. It's not a vague, wouldn't it be nice if everybody had a kumbaya moment? No, this is very, very specific. Now, I'm just one person and each of these traders has an interest in this, and you should make your opinion known, because that's going to make a difference. But I'll also say, our Victoria University has been great on this, and everybody wants a positive outcome. And we've had a really good run and a great track record. And I think there's a bright future for PredictIt. We're really in the middle of the 2024 election cycle, and it would be a shame if the academic, the research benefit of PredictIt, the forecasting, the antidote to fake news, which is how we consider PredictIt, it would be a real shame if this were to go away before the power of these prediction markets is able to be fully understood. Long run, it's going to be okay. Near term, it has to do with what the people listening to this podcast decide to do.
Yeah. Well, John, look, I can tell you, in the time that we have been engaged, not only at SSG, but in the prediction community writ large, I think, as you know, none of us are shy about voicing our opinions, and we've all taken shots at PredictIt in the past. But I can tell you, overwhelmingly, it's just maybe 101, 200 to 1. Opinion is very, very sympathetic to PredictIt. I think we're all in your camp and rooting for the right outcome. It's just the way the community has responded, I think, very much speaks to what PredictIt has offered. So we certainly want to be a resource to you. And if I can, I'll just maybe offer some unsolicited advice here. I think one would be that even among people who know the industry and the space well, I think a lot of people have questions about what precisely the research value has been of PredictIt. I think there's sort of a theory or a notion out there that PredictIt says it's for research purposes, but they're kind of a gambling site at heart. So to the degree that PredictIt can really make it known what intellectual or academic contributions it's brought to the table, I think this information is probably less known than it might appear at PredictIt. I would say the second thing that I would recommend, and you don't have to respond here, obviously, but if we're entering a period where we have 6 months to really get this right one way or the other, to the degree that PredictIt's finances can allow it, if there are things that PredictIt can do to cut fees or at least temporarily sort of make it easy to trade properly on the site, profit, and maybe even withdraw with a little bit of ease, I think that might clear up some anxieties traders have, because I'm hearing from a lot of people that they're worried that PredictIt won't even make it to February. They're withdrawing their accounts quickly. I personally don't think that's true. In my estimation, people's money is safe through February, but to the degree that there are things the company can do to just make life a little bit easier for traders, I think that would be very welcome going forward.
Those are excellent suggestions. There's a counterparty for every position in PredictIt, so that money's kept in a separate account, and I appreciate that very much. We're looking at a lot of different things that we might be able to do. We're hesitant to make too many changes at this point, just because we want to get through. We want to reduce the uncertainty in the next 6 months, and PredictIt's going to continue to operate as it always has through February. I wish I could answer. I think the big question in people's minds is what happens after February with the 2024 contracts. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do there. Obviously, there's going to have to be some resolution on that. But in the meantime, those are good suggestions. You guys have never been shy in terms of suggesting things that we might want to adjust. We on the research piece of this, in terms of transparency, we have brought in some of these. There are about 110 or 112 universities and researchers, academic institutions. The Federal Reserve is one of them that gets the anonymized predicted data to understand why these markets react the way they do. Some of the professors are studying what makes for super forecasters or when forecasts are up, et cetera. So a lot of that, we've not done a good job of categorizing and collecting all that information, and because it's difficult for us to know what each of these researchers are doing. And some of them don't want, their other universities to know what they're doing. But there's great interest in the academic community, and we've tried to make the information on an anonymized, aggregated basis available to those who are doing the research, and we've done a decent job of that, but we could do better there. We have arranged for some of these academics and researchers to present to the CFTC and to the chairman of the CFTC and others over the years, because there are areas of research that fake news, for instance, that people want to be able to delve into, that we felt might be, without specific permission from the CFTC, might be out of scope. And so we've tried to pull that together, and that the academic community, the students that are using it, that professors using it in their teaching of courses on market behavior and the like, but also for their research in public opinion and the like, they've made good use of the data. But there's a lot going on there, and I get your point, and we probably could make more information available. Right now, we're head down, focused on what happens over the next 6 months. And I would encourage everybody that feels like they got a stake in this to speak up.
So as we depart and say goodbye, can you just remind people where they can register their opinion? I know we have it pinned to all of our Twitters and to the Star Spangled Gamblers website, but you said you've put up a website too, SavePredictIt.org, is that right? Yeah,
SavePredictIt.org, but they can come to SSG and the link is there, but they can go to SavePredictIt.org, and we'll be, those expressions of opinion are they're going to be listened to on the Hill. And at the commission. I mean, this is our agency, and we're doing nothing wrong. And actually, we're doing a lot right. I'm telling you, we are, the community. So the fact of the matter is, and you got to make your opinion heard.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, thank you for coming on and being candid and telling your side of the story. I think there were some surprises. There was wonderful confidence, refreshing humility too about the complexity of the industry and just trying to build the car as we drive it sometimes. So thank you for joining us. We're of course very hopeful that this resolves, and we're eager to help you to the furthest extent that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks, guys, and thanks to the community. We really appreciate it.
And by the way, to close on some degeneracy, there is actually a way to bet on this entire issue. If you go on insightprediction.com, there's a market. Will predict it survive. Resolution date February 2023. The markets are saying no at 89%. Based on our interview here, I'm going to say go for the underdog. I have confidence in John and the team. So.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. All right.
Thank
See
you
you guys. Yeah.